BT2 Comics Chat here. David Taylor 2 is my real name. And welcome to another episode of Flash Chat. Everybody that's participating live on the Twitter stream, welcome. Everybody that's watching me on my Facebook page, everybody that's listening to this podcast, everybody that's watching the video on YouTube, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about The Flash Season 6, Episode 8, The Last Temptation of Barry Allen, Part 2. Again, that's The Flash Season 6, Episode 8, The Last Temptation of Barry Allen, Part 2. This one had a lot of twists and turns in it. It was actually quite surprising all the way up until the end. And then we know what happened after that, but I'll get to that later after the chat. Okay? So let's dive right in with question one. And question one is, I really want to know how long Cisco had those, Babel protocols, or the Babel Protocols 2.0. That force field around Star Labs would have come in handy before. So I don't remember if Cisco mentioned when he actually instituted that. And the reason I bring that up is because they sure do have convenient plot technology when they need it. Because just like Star Labs has needed a serious security system for a long time now, they still don't have one. They still don't have one. All of a sudden, Cisco has got this protocol they didn't tell anybody else about that has to do with being sure that the Flash can't get in. Oh, Lord, some on my right. That the Flash can't get in because they've got that force shield up. And I'm like, well, it sure would have been nice during, I don't know, the Zoom days. I don't know, during all these other days, especially when you're dealing with speedsters, during the Savitar days, Cisco specifically said he put that up there in case the Flash ever went dark. And I'm saying to myself, you've already faced, a truckload of dark speedsters. Zoom, Savitar, Trajectory, plenty of speedsters hanging around, not, up to no good. And now all of a sudden you whip out this Babel protocol that says, you can keep the Flash out. So I'm assuming that's a shield that somehow a speedster couldn't vibrate through. Don't know what that technology would be unless it was like, I don't know, I won't say unstable molecules, I'll say shifting molecular patterns. Like, the structure of it, the nature of it keeps moving or keeps shifting, and it's not something stable. So if a speedster is trying to vibrate his molecules through it, maybe he could get stuck or could solidify, or, there's no set pattern, so they couldn't get through it. That's the only thing I can figure. Of course it's comic book science, we get that. It kind of goes without saying at this point, but I mean, what would they do with something like that? So anyway, yeah, this shadow on my face is really looking funny. That's why I keep moving my head, because it looks just so funny. I got to get a light. I've been working on getting a light. But anyway, those of you that listen to the podcast, don't worry about that. So yeah, so that's what I'm thinking, that it sure would have been nice if in seasons past, against foes past, particularly Savitar, the Time Remnant version of Savitar, not the comics version, you need to read the comics. If you want to know who Savitar really is, you need to read Dead Heat, and you need to read Terminal Velocity. Read those arcs. They're collected in paperback. They're by Mark Waid. That's where we actually meet the real Savitar, who's much more interesting than the one we met on the show, just to throw that out there, because, I'm always a strong advocate for reading comics yourselves. Okay, so let me jump on the Twitter stream and let me see what people are saying in response to question one. Come on, Twitter. I got people waiting. It's loading super slow. We need some super speed right now. Okay, here we go. All right. So, in answer to that question, Mike says, Mike, which is Irish Mike _ is 076. Mike says, Cisco thinks he's Batman now. Didn't ask that. Is kind of funny, though. Chris Colfer fan says, me too, and I agree. Polly says, P_MACHOR says, it's like they just make things up when convenient. See, me and Polly, we think alike. But yes, since anyone seems to get in or out of Star Labs, then you think this would be used all the time. See, we think alike. Polly, me and you, we here. We right here. We here. because that's exactly what I said before I came to the Twitter stream, because it's just convenient plot technology. It just shows up when, they need it to show up or whatever. And there are plenty of other times and circumstances and situations where that tech would have come in really, really, really super handy. Okay. So, yeah. So, and the other thing about, now that they've established that, are we ever going to see it again? There's a tendency that, once something has served its purpose in the plot for that particular episode, for it to just disappear altogether. And so the question then becomes, are we ever going to see these Babel protocols again? In case, Barry, turns into Negative Flash or Dark Flash. Now, Negative Flash is actually a character from the comics. So, and Barry had the look of Negative Flash too. Bloodwork is also a character from the comics. But they called him Dark Flash. So, these are different characters. Black Flash, Negative Flash, these are definitely different characters. And so sometimes they play loose and fast with the names. It can be kind of confusing, especially if you know the original character from the comics. But anyway, on that point again, it'll be interesting to see that at some point in the future, in case we're facing a Barry gone rogue or some other speedster, if those protocols even get brought up again, if they're ever even mentioned again when we're dealing with a speedster or someone that might be able to penetrate something by vibrating. So you have to have a shield that somehow keeps out or keeps modulating vibrational frequencies. That's the way it kind of works on Star Trek. The reason that the shields work is because they keep vibrating at a certain frequency. And then sometimes when they say rotate the shield harmonics, that means they're rotating the frequency so enemy fire can't penetrate through. That's the idea. So again, that's the same kind of thought I'm applying to this shield around Star Labs. Okay. All right, let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2 is, wait, I think I got one more answer on 4. Yeah, Mauricio in La Realidad Nuoso says, I suspect that he had the idea a few months after realizing that he could not separate from his girlfriend. I'm sorry, this is an emergency. Finally, I have quality time for myself. You're trying to call Cisco needy there, Ricio? Maybe Ricio's taking a dig at Cisco. Trying to call him needy. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Okay, question number 2. I thought Iris was right to call Cisco out for not testing the photon gun, but when does Cisco ever test his contraptions before he activates them? Okay, that's question 2. And the reason I bring that question up, of course, is because of just what we said. Cisco seems to throw something together. And remember, now I talked about this on a podcast, but remember that one of the, I always place movie rules or TV rules on my Twitter timeline. One of them is that if you're a scientist of anything, you're a scientist of everything. I want you to notice that in the movies and on TV, if someone is the science guy or the science girl, all of a sudden, medical science, bioengineering, genealogy, human sexuality, any type of pediatrician, gynecological needs for a pregnant woman or a delivering mother, any type of, ear, nose, and throat, spine, whatever type of medical profession or specialty is needed. If you're the science guy or the science girl on a show or in a movie, all of a sudden you have expertise. It's the most amazing thing. Now, I know you have to study a wide variety of things, and I know you have to study the human body from head to toe, but then most doctors go into a specialty area. They pick a field, and then they try to focus on that particular field. But it just always amazes me because, any type of engineering, bioengineering, chemical engineering, architectural engineering, building a building, building a gun, weapons tech, Cisco can just, whatever it is. Between him and Caitlin, there's no discipline they don't have covered, which is always funny. But anyway, so again, the question was, does Cisco ever test his contraptions before he activates them? Because Iris had a really good point. You're going to fire a photon gun at my husband without testing it, that might kill him. And I thought Iris was on point with that. So let me see what answers I get. Mauricio says, I find it quite ridiculous that after so many years of working and fighting together, she distrusts Cisco's technical capabilities. Also, Barry fully trusts the decisions of Cisco. Now that's a good point that Mauricio brought up. Barry has officially deemed Cisco as the leader of Team Flash once he's gone. So that means that Barry, Barry used it as a clue. We'll get to that later when Barry talks about, I knew I picked the right guy. So if Barry trusts, if Barry trusts Cisco in that way, why doesn't Iris trust him that way? That's a very, 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 very good question. Why doesn't Iris trust him like that? Should she, in these circumstances, should she just be like, Cisco, I trust you, I know you know what you're doing, you've come through for the team time and time again, or again? I personally feel like she was right, but Mauricio's point is very, very well taken, that with Barry putting his full trust in Cisco, clearly Iris does not, in spite of their history. Excellent point, and I'm going to answer him on that one. And I'm going to say that that is an excellent point. That is an excellent point after all these years and Barry trusting Cisco implicitly. Why? Implicitly, forgot the L. Why doesn't Iris? But was she right not to trust in this situation? Okay. All right. Polly says, it's always a, I just built this, so just trust me, it works kind of thing. I don't like this hounding like he's out of kindergarten and never successfully built a thing before. Okay. Awesome point. Iris probably should have, even though I think she was right, given Cisco the benefit of the doubt. But I do think she was right, at least to ask him about potential failure. I don't think that's too much for a woman to ask about her husband, Team Forward, Team Forward says never. Okay. When does Cisco ever tested contraptions? Never. Chris Colfer fan of old show says, I agree. I do like Cisco, but I agree with Iris on this. I'm going to say I do too. I at least feel like she should have required him to shoot it at something and measure those results before firing it at Barry. Because Barry does have that trust and everything, and I do get that and everything, but still. I'm telling Paul, and I have brain turns on this one. I just said all of that verbatim on the live stream. And I'm going to say, Mike, at least he's not Batman from the future who killed Superman. Now, for those of you that don't know, Crisis on Infinite Earths has started. And, okay, so I'm going to hold my comments because I have a lot to say, but I'm going to say it all in the same space because this is Flash Chat. But when I do let loose on that one, it's going to be epic because, holy cow, the things that have happened so far. And episode 3 is tonight, but I'll get to that later. Okay? And Polly says on question 2 also, what exactly besides a person is he going to test it on? Do we have lab rats connected to Ramsey? I'm going to say also another good practical point, but their tech has failed in the past. It doesn't always work out on the first try, which is true. Okay. Team Flash hasn't always had a 100% track record for everything working right. Okay. Risa says, Iris's problem is that her argument started in with Barry, I love you, please. And that is no match for some good scientific instrument, weapon, whatever. I'm going to say, Ricio, dropping truth bombs today. So basically, he's saying that Iris's influence over her husband will trump everything else. So there you have it. Pretty much cannot argue with that one now, can we? All right, let's look at question 3. Okay, does anybody else feel like Camilla and Cecile in The Office was basically World War Z? Because that's the way I felt. I felt like I was in that movie with Brad Pitt with World War Z. And I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it just felt so entirely similar to what we've seen before. And I was just wondering how they were going to get out of it. And then Camilla goes that Cecile is some type of zombie detector or whatever. But, you know, the zombies in World War Z were sensitive to any little bit of sound. Like if you made any kind of sound, man, they would come flying because they weren't really slow like Walking Dead zombies. They were super fast. And so I think they kind of skirted the line here with this particular episode. But in World War Z, man, you made any sounds and they were on you. So, so it was kind of interesting watching Camilla and Cecile try to navigate through that hallway. Mauricio says, I think it was the first time I liked the scene where those two characters were. Thanks, Bloodwork. I'm like, oh, wow. So you liked seeing them in Jeopardy. Truly, though, it highlights the fact that they don't really have anything significant to do on the show. And the show is still way too crowded, because it is. Okay, the show is just still way too crowded in terms of number of characters. It just has too many. And, you know, I always want to focus on Barry, but it seems like the show always wants 2 to 3 concurrent storylines where like Barry and Iris have their main adventure, or Barry is talking to Cisco and Iris is off with, you know, Iris's angels. And then Frost has her own thing too. So it's like, you know, okay, Polly says, I've been playing a lot of zombie games, State of Decay 2 in 7 days. And I felt like they were too. It was exactly like World War Z. I'm going to say, I love those games. And yes, for Brain Twins again. And again, it just highlights that those 2 characters are somewhat extraneous to the main action and need something to do. Show is still way too crowded. Okay? Still just way too crowded. Okay? Chris Colfer fan says, yes, kind of. So I guess it kind of reminded him of World War Z, but it reminded me big time of World War Z. Okay, we are going to move on to question 4. If Joe wanted non-lethal force, the only other possible answer was containment. So what was his plan for that? I want you to remember in the episode when Bloodwork is downtown, he's infecting all those people. Joe gets on the bullhorn and he's yelling to his fellow officers and saying, you know, remember, these people are innocent, non-lethal force only. And he yells that at the top of his lungs. These people are innocent, non-lethal force only. Okay? So if they're going to use non-lethal force, they're going to, I guess, put them down but not take them out, which I'm trying to understand how that's possible, because based on the nature of the zombie infection, it looks like they have regenerative powers, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to take them down, but you don't want to take them out, then the only answer, the only option for that is containment. You got to contain them somewhere. You got to herd them in to some kind of container and then seal them off, lock them up. And what was Joe's plan for that in the middle of the street? That's what I was trying to understand. If they weren't planning, I mean, I understood his point. Those people were innocent, and they were innocent, and they were taken over by blood work, and they were zombies against their will. So they were basically doing what blood work wanted them to do, but those people had no intention of trying to kill and eat their fellow man or whatever. I get all that, but again, if we're going to take them down but not out, you have to contain them. How was my question? What was Joe's plan for that? Okay. See what answers I get. And Chris Cover fan says, I'm not really sure. Polly says, I was thinking the same thing. How in the world is he going to contain all these people plus Ramsey? Unless he's going to herd them towards Star, hoping the accelerator could hold them, until they could stop them correctly, like a corral. Okay. And I'm going to say, brain twins again, except that he didn't have the vehicles or the manpower to herd that many people, that many infected people in one direction. And they probably would have overrun Star Labs before anything else. I just don't think Joe, I don't know if I'm saying that, I'm gonna say he didn't think it through. And I really don't think Joe thought that through. I think he was reacting in the moment, you know, and of course he was doing what he had to do. And again, I understand his perspective and what he was saying. It's just that, you know, if you're not going to kill him, and I'm not saying he should have killed him, but if you're not going to kill him, you have to contain him. And so I'm saying that to say, I think he should have showed up with like tanks. If Joe shows up with like tanks, huge tanks, or huge vans, or huge police trucks, or, you know, police trucks that are like the UPS trucks, or something, anything, you know, paddy wagons, old school paddy wagons, that's really old school. But anything to where once he, you know, taking them down, he could get them in there and get them off the street, get them out of harm's way. But then, of course, he would have to hope that whatever that thing was he brought could hold them if they went crazy, because, of course, when you get zombified, you get increased strength, which has always amazed me. On The Walking Dead, those are definitely reanimated corpses. They explained it that, you know, the part of you that just wants to eat comes back alive when you reanimate. That's the science of that show. But they're super strong. You know, how do your muscles that are decaying and rotting and your body falling apart, how do you even have muscles, or how is the oxygen and the blood flowing to help you have strength to do what those zombies do? So that never made a lot of sense to me, but, you know, I'm, you know, a geek. I obsess over details. That's kind of what we do. But in this situation, you know, just with all that Joe was doing, I mean, I know it was a fast kind of thing, but they should have been calling all cars, man. They should have come upon that scene with containment in mind, with as many, you know, vans, trucks, police buses, like when they transport prisoners from one place to the other, they're on those blue buses. At least that's what they're like in Chicago. Joe should have showed up with that if containment was his plan. But I mean, you know, I know he was thinking as fast as he could. I also didn't quite understand the idea behind when Joe got scratched or hit, or one of those female zombies gutted him in the back. They scratched a big chunk out of his back. So I didn't write this as a question on Twitter, but I'm going to pose it here. Like, doesn't that mean he was supposed to get infected? I wasn't sure how that worked. Because again, I know on The Walking Dead and I know on World War Z, if you get scratched or bitten or any type of mixed with anything, you get infected, you turn into a zombie yourself. So I was wondering how come that scratch didn't infect him. Now, they said a couple of times that blood work required that his potential victims, that looks so funny, my eyebrow looks so funny without light, that blood work required his potential victims to be afraid. So maybe that was it, you know, but does that mean they had to be facing blood work? Does that mean they had to create Was he doing like Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul and Batman Begins? Was he creating an atmosphere of fear? So anybody that comes around, they will automatically be afraid and they'd be easier for infection. So I think they played kind of, fast and loose with those rules in terms of, actually having to be afraid to be infected. Because they said it a couple times, but I don't think that holds up if you're infecting large crowds of people at once. But I mean, I guess everybody would be afraid, but how do you measure that? How would you know? Does the infection, come towards your body and then say, well, I don't sense enough fear, so then it goes away? Or, that just wasn't clear. Wasn't clear enough, I don't think. Okay? Let's move on to question 5. Question 5 is, I don't get the whole point of Ramsey Berry confronting Iris. Was he just trying to get her scared? Because I would say she was plenty scared. Why didn't Venom Flash infect her? And that's just what I was talking about. So for some reason, Ramsey, through Barry, calls Iris and he confronts her and, he does the Zoom, vibrating hand through your heart thing, which would scare anybody once you saw somebody die like that. And, was he just trying to get her scared? Or, or what? I didn't quite understand. Was Barry in control of that situation? And he was trying to make sure that he got some clues to Iris to let her know that he was still in there? Or was that totally Ramsey? Or, what, I didn't quite get that because she seemed plenty scared. So I didn't understand why Ramsey didn't just infect her on the spot, because that would have saved a lot of problems if you think about it. A lot of problems would have been solved if he'd infected Iris at that point, because now she would no longer be fighting against him. She would be fighting with him, with blood work with Ramsey. Okay. Fabiolo says, Golden West Island rule, she never gets affected by anything as if she has any superpower. Sorry, not sorry. Everybody's busting on Iris today. Got to put a smiley face emoji with that one. Everybody's busting on Iris today. But it actually is true that she rarely gets hurt or infected or anything like someone else would. Okay, and we just call that main character powers. Some might call it a Mary Sue. I don't know. We'll have to see. Chris Colfer fan says, I agree. I also wonder why Venom Flash did not infect her. Maybe a lack of time. Maybe if it was a longer arc, he would have. That's a good point. That's a good point. But she already seemed plenty scared in that scene, as is, I thought. Okay. All right, Polly says, I think he was trying to scare her, and Barry was trying to send her a message, which was confirmed later. It didn't hurt her because Barry was making him not to do so. So that was an example of what Barry referred to at the end, that he was fighting Ramsey on the inside. So he wouldn't hurt us. Okay. All right, that's feasible, based on what Barry says later, because later on Barry does says he was fighting him that whole time and that he felt his resolve slip and that, he just felt Ramsey kind of giving up. So, okay, I can buy that. The idea of the episode was that Cisco and Iris realized they were wrong to be acting separately. The first part for that realization was Iris, and then it was Cisco. I'm going to say that's really, really true. But Iris should have gotten some consequences for her recklessness. Right, I spelled that right. Recklessness. But just like Fabiolo said, she never does. Because she doesn't. Should have been some consequences for her charging over there. She's up against Ramsey and Barry super speed. And she was plenty scared. So something should have happened, but nothing happened. So she just, comes out of it. As always. Okay? And so Polly says yes. One of the times he was battling to help Wild infected, stopping Ramsey here and there. So, okay. All right, let's move on to question number 6, which was my favorite scene in the whole episode. Okay, that Killer Frost ice clap was tight. She always gets the best scenes, agree or disagree. So Killer Frost, and if you remember the episode, Killer Frost is surrounded by a bunch of infected zombies, and they're closing in on her. And there's really no way out because she's surrounded in a circle, and she frosts those hands up, where she does a clap, and that frost explodes all around her and takes them down. And that was so tight. It was so tight. She always gets, I think, the best scenes, from the ice slides to the ice daggers to all the stuff that she does. It's always cool. Barry every now and then gets a cool scene, like when he throws lightning, it's always cool. One of the coolest things he ever did for me was a couple of seasons ago when he vibrated that whole train. That's something only the Flash could do. That was just unbelievable. He vibrated that whole train. But Killer Frost, man, seems like anytime she's in a tight situation, she's got some cool move to get her out of it, which I think is just incredible. Okay? So let me hear what you guys had to say. Fabiola says, not even surprised with it. She's been absolutely amazing at these fight scenes this season. Finally, I mean, we are getting something. And I'm going to say that I agree completely. She's just awesome. She's really just awesome. So, I've said it a million times. I wouldn't mind a Flash Frost show. Mauricio says, agree, but it would have been much more impressive that she had taken the injured Joe and gone on ice slide. I'm going to say, yes, we all missed that ice slide for sure. She should have. But the ice slide isn't faster than a Vibe teleporter disc, So, if she, had taken him up on the ice slide and gone back to Star Labs or whatever, that would have been cool to see, but it's not wouldn't have been as fast as the little teleporter discs, okay? Polly says, loved it, but confused why she didn't do it in the first place. If she did that, then the big hopeless battle wouldn't have happened. I was waiting for something to happen besides Joe and Frost trying to Jackie Chan their way out. That's true. That's true. Another example of how they have to nerf both she and Barry. Otherwise, they could take these lame villains out in seconds, because they really could. Between Barry and Killer Frost, there's very little that they faced that they couldn't have actually taken out as a team, that they couldn't have taken out in a second. So they have to nerf them every time. They absolutely nerf them, and then they don't have their, they're not using their complete powers, or for some reason they forget all the things that they can do. That's very, very common on this show, that they have both Barry and Caitlin forget all the things that they can do, and then they just nerf them in the middle of a battle, and then sometimes in the middle of a fight scene, Barry remembers he has super speed or whatever. He remembers he can throw lightning, or he remembers he can vibrate, or all the stuff he can do, and he ought to be able to do more stuff by now. And Killer Frost seems to come up with a new expression of her ice powers every season. She's got Frost Breath, she's got Ice Slide, she got Frost Daggers, she has a Blizzard Strike, she has the Ice Clap. She's got so much cool stuff. So you put her in a mix between she and Barry, they ought to be able to stop most of the stuff they face, and they know that, so they have to nerf them. And I'm going to deal with that later about her falling apart in the midst of pressure. That's a later question. So they have to nerf them to make it work. Okay, Andrew Sparling says, agree, Killer Frost is shaped up to be an interesting hero, anti-hero in her own right. I love to see her in her own show, but Caitlin is integral to Flash. I'm going to say true, but they could do many episodes like they used to do in the earlier seasons, because they did. In the earlier seasons, they did do smaller episodes like Cisco stuff. And remember, they did the same thing on Smallville. They had something called Chloe's Chronicles or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But they had like little side events, part of the main show, but Chloe was still on. They could do the same thing with Killer Frost. Because, you know, many times it's clear to us that we don't always know what Frost is doing and where she's going anyway. So it would be cool to see that, if you ask me. Ben says the crisis is here. Risen Shadow 86 says agree. Because, you know, again, just so awesome, and that awesomeness needs to happen on a regular basis. And, you know, so she could get out of a whole lot of situations that she's been in, both her and Barry both. Okay, let's go on to question 7. Okay, when Cisco confronted Bloodwork, he vibed over there with a pocket transporter. Why did he get rid of his own ability to do that? And the reason I brought that up is because they still need vibing in terms of the teleportational aspect. You know, another power that they seem to have forgotten that Vibe has is like somewhat of a geoforce power, somewhat of the ability to create sound waves and earthquakes. Now, Reverb on Earth 2 had perfected that power, but Cisco had that potential. But Cisco mainly used his teleportation power and nothing else. But the point I'm trying to make is that they still need that power. They all have the little pocket teleporters. You know, even Iris had one. And they use them on Crisis too. They still need that vibing power. So why he got rid of his ability to do it naturally, his mutant ability, that still feels very small to me. Like, you know, somehow he didn't think he could have a life and a girlfriend and still be Vibe, which he could have. But we know from some of the clips in Crisis, he gets restored. We knew he was going to get restored. We knew Cisco was going to be Vibe again because Vibe is too good of a character to not have. And, you know, he's going to have a moment with Camilla where he says, you know, I realize I could be both, and Camilla's going to go, well, I loved you anyway. I always loved you anyway. I loved you better. And everybody's going to roll their eyes. Because we know that. You're supposed to have audience revelations that we don't already know. You're supposed to show the characters doing things that we haven't already figured out so we can be, you know, surprised by them. But we can always see that coming a mile away. Okay, let me see some of your answers for this one. Mauricio says, I have the theory that in this universe, everyone watched Superman 2, but for some strange reason, they turned off the TV when Clark and Lois were in the fortress bed. That would explain a lot. I guess so. Got to give him a laughing emoji on that one. But yeah, there's no good in story reason for Cisco to be without his powers at this point. Okay? And there's just no good reason for it. Okay? Polly, Chris Colford fan says, I wonder that too. Polly says, because that would mean no woman would ever love him and he would have no chance at a family. And Brian Leo Kurt answers that and says, no, the girl he's with now, I can't remember her name, is one cool girl. Like Star Wars Wedding Cool. I said this him to give up his powers would have been a thing if he had not developed the tech. Polly's being sarcastic. Brian. Man, sarcasm is really lost on the internet. Okay? When you're typing something, man, if you don't spell out, I'm being sarcastic right now, then people will take you seriously. Polly is, of course, being sarcastic when she says, because that would mean no woman would ever love him. We have no chance of a family. Pay attention, snark, blah, 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 blah. You know, in other words, she's making fun of the extremes that they go to on the show. Because Barry and Iris are married. They're together, they're a family. Clark and Lois are married. They're together, they're a family. So that whole idea that having powers and having a superhero life means you can't have a family life has already been negated in Arrowverse. I mean, Oliver and Felicity were married too. So I'm saying that to say that Cisco knows couples. He knows married couples in the Arrowverse, and they're making it work. So, I mean, why in the world does he think that he can't make it work? It doesn't make any. I've been racking my brain, and I'm like, you know, do you feel guilty about Gypsy? Like, you know, It doesn't make any in-story sense for him to be thinking that I have to give up my powers to have a life when you have examples around you of people that didn't give up their powers and they're married with children even. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. Just doesn't. Okay. I said positively sarcastic, Brian, and Brian says I'm an idiot. That's Brian Leo Kurt. Brian's hilarious. Good friend of mine on Twitter. He's hilarious. You need to check him out. He's always smart and intelligent, but all of my followers are super smart, super intelligent, always have something good to say. That's why I love hanging out with him. Fabiolo says, because plot. As we have discussed before, Cisco hated being Bob because of Thawne, and as soon as they got over that, he comes up with the whole I want to be normal. When has he done something that is normal in the past years? And I'm going to say, so true. Nothing about being on Team Flash could be classified as normal, even if you're a non-meta, because they save the world at least once a year. Normal people don't do that, which is true. Team Flash saves the world, man. They save the world at least once a year. At least once a year, there is a worldwide threatening catastrophe, and Team Flash comes through. Okay, let's move on because this time is always flying. I always have plenty of questions. And I'll put in a word from our sponsor. You're going to hear that later. My RPG, Soldiers and Serpents, is out right now. So you can role play as your favorite characters from the Realm series, and you get to choose between the dark and the light. Okay, you can get your copy now. And there's a link on the tweet, but the address you go to is secretsoftherealm.com, secretsoftherealm, secretsoftherealm.com, and you can order your copy of the tabletop role-playing game by me, Soldiers and Serpents, where you get to fight in the war, go on mission, use all kind of cool swords and powers, but you got to choose between the dark and the light. It's an incredibly fun game, even though obviously I am biased, but go get it now, okay? Question 8, even though I liked Caitlin's speech in which she said, that's what heroes do, I'm simply not understanding why Frost is now acting like the Hulk in Endgame, afraid to come out. Since when is she the fearful one? Okay? And Fabiolo says they're trying to make her human, but how many times have we said that she is not and will never be? That's right. They need to just let Frost be her snarky, confident self and stop trying to humanize her by making her second guess things in the time of stress, because that's what she does. She keeps second guessing things during stressful times, and I just don't like that. Mauricio says, let's see, this is going to be speculation, but I think the problem is that Killer Frost is having is that she's basically starting to develop empathy, feelings, and other types of emotional development. But once again, that's playing her like she's Data. Like she's never had emotions before and she doesn't know what they are. And that's simply not true, because that isn't true. So they kind of need to make up their minds with what they're doing with Killer Frost. Because if she's like Data, that means she's childlike, and I don't like that version at all. Even if she's developing empathy or sympathy or whatever, it wouldn't be like this, because she's been around since Caitlin was a little girl. Killer Frost is not new to the world, that's what I'm saying. They keep trying to write her like she's new to the world. No, she's not. Polly says, I completely didn't understand that in either instance, but you yourself told me not to talk about Professor Hulk. That's right. was really out of control even if she was scared, or out of character even if she was scared, which never was her feeling before, because she shows courage and she has Snow's courage. That's right. That's right. I keep saying she is not new to the world. She's been around since Caitlin was a little girl. So I just don't accept that emotions would overwhelm her like that. She's shown much strength. She's shown much strength under stress, and she really has. Killer Frost has shown a lot of, remember how she rescued Team Flash from Amunet, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. She's shown a lot of strength under stress. And this is the first time we're really seeing her have meltdowns when she gets under stress or whatever, like all of a sudden she can't handle it. And that is just completely unacceptable, out of character, doesn't make any sense based on what we've seen from her before. All right, question 9. Here's my question. If Iris and Cisco could figure out from various word clues that Barry was sending messages, why couldn't Bloodwork, who was in Barry's mind all this time? Now, here's this other thing. This is always my issue with Professor X, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, Cuckoo Sisters, Telepath, Jean Johns, Miss Martian, John Jones, excuse me. Reading somebody's mind, or even empaths like Deanna Troy or Cecile on this show or whatever, reading somebody's mind or reading somebody's emotions, I give you. Possession of somebody's mind, however, coming in and taking over their soul, and then somehow they're your puppet or they're your marionette. Now you can control them, control their actions. Now I want you to remember that just last week, Ramsey showed the ability through his infection to be in some of the deepest parts of Barry's mind, to where the Speed Force had to manifest in the form of his mother, shape of Barry's mother, Nora Allen. But anyway, that's an old joke. Where the Speed Force had to manifest, but Ramsey showed that he's in the nooks and the crevices and the crannies of Barry's mind. He could sneak up on Barry in his own mind and scare him. And he was just a mental projection. He was just there because of the infection in his blood, but he was sneaking up on Barry's thoughts and in his dreams and his nightmares and blah, 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 blah. And he was doing all that. And so that meant to me that he had access to those secret places in Barry's mind because he was scaring him inside of his own mind. If he could do all that and he's aware of what Barry's thinking, then how in the world does he not know that Barry's sending subliminal messages, because Barry would have to think about it to do it. So that's what I'm saying. That's always my issue with this mind, excuse me, with this mind control stuff. Because just like so many powers, it seems kind of convenient. Like they're just conveniently controlled based on what the plot requires. Let me hear what you guys have to say. Fabiello says probably Speed Force trying to protect him. Not quite sure what are the limitations of the Speed Force in the show, but in the end they were fighting for the control, meaning there has to be some sort of mechanism doing that, not letting him be that vulnerable. Polly says, think it was an either or shared mind. If one was taken, the other's brain was turned off. Hope that makes sense. Skyhawk says having a one-track mind and a big ego might be a reason. Okay, now that's kind of legit. So you're saying that Bloodwork's ego and his focus distracted him from what Barry was really doing. Now that's interesting. Because maybe that's possible, but like I said, I don't really know how that stuff works. That's the thing. Polly says it wasn't exactly an unbreakable code or secret language. Zombie brain must not be working at full function. And to that, I'm going to say what I just said. But remember, just last week, we saw Ramsey sneaking up on Barry in his own mind and scaring him. So Ramsey has access to Barry's secret places. That's why I don't get it. because I don't get how Ramsey, but what Skyhawk said actually sounds kind of legit, to be honest, that maybe Ramsey was so busy controlling all those other zombies and doing what he was doing that maybe that distraction or that the 100% focus on Barry would give Barry the room to be sneaking messages out to his friends and family. So probably true. Mauricio says, you are right, and it makes no sense that this happened. I hope that somehow the Cisco plan or any external element will end up saving Barry. But obviously, you should never underestimate the power of love and the goodwill. Sci-Fi Elements says, password protected thoughts, like the memory warehouse from Dreamcatcher. Possible, but I wouldn't think that Barry has that kind of mental control. That's Jean Grey or John Jones level stuff. Okay, so I would think that mature or seasoned telepaths might be able to password protect some of the stuff in their mind, but I don't think Barry could do something like that. You know, just don't think so. Okay, that was question 9. Question 10. Allegra saves the day again. Sure is fortunate they found a meta with UV ray powers who turned good. What was their plan if there was no Allegra? And once again, what have I been saying all hour? Plot convenient powers, plot convenient everything. But anyway, she says, if there was no Allegra, my allergies would be 10 times worse. But that's Polly. Seriously though, I'm not sure. Maybe have, I don't know, the Flash on his own show. Killer Frost to freeze the molecular structure so it didn't pick up speed. Iris to scold it for being inadequate. Oh, you guys are cracking me up today with all this busting on Iris. Okay. So, you know, this is not the first time Allegra has saved the day. I'm like, it's awful convenient that you have a meta that specifically has UV powers. And remember, she was a villain. And then somehow she turned good. And then somehow they led her on Team Iris. And then somehow they ended up spilling all the superhero secrets because she kind of figured out and they admitted it. Now she's actually going on adventures with them. I'm like, that's awful convenient because if Allegra had not been around, or let's say she had never turned good. Let's say she had never desired to use her powers for the good and she had stayed a criminal. Then what would they have done? What was the plan then? So all I'm asking, just a simple question, okay? Question 11. Did you like the big Flash versus Bloodwork CGI fight at the end? Bloodwork is a villain from the comics, by the way, and I put a comic panel on the Twitter stream, but so that fight was, I won't say it was comics accurate, but I will say it was from the comics. And so, you know, it was kind of, well, funny. My first reaction was I thought it was kind of funny because it's so predictable now that at some point, you know, a regular sized or normal humanoid character is gonna embiggen and turn into a big CGI thing. And, you know, Bloodwork just kept screaming at the camera with his big skull and his fangs and his big bloody skull. And I know it was supposed to be scary, but I just thought it was kind of funny because he looked like a reject from like Doom, you know, or House of the Dead or something. I don't know. It just, I don't know. I don't know. I think they meant for that to be a little bit more serious than it came off. Mauricio says, I like the design of the monster, but not the fight with the monster. I think that making Flash fights attractive is already a lost cause. And I said, I think that's more true when he's fighting other speedsters. Because then everything is so fast, they have to slow it down for us to see what's happening. Okay? All right, Polly says, yes, because it brought back the essence of Bloodwork, that horrifying creature I remember from the comics. I miss the non-people villains from these shows. Maybe I'm old school cheesy. That I'm going to say. That's a really good point, because the Flash really only kind of does the Smallville formula, which is freak of the week or of the season. Because the Flash, that is what they do. They do freak of the week stuff or freak of the season stuff. And Smallville did freak of the week stuff all the time. Somebody would find some kryptonite, some meteor rock, they would get infected, and it would manifest in powers, and they would turn evil every time, every time. So like you get infected, I guess it affects the brain and you have to turn into a villain ever. But that one dude that needed heat couldn't get hot, so he absorbed the cold. So he's like an ice man, except, you know, he was kind of like Killer Frost was originally. She couldn't retain heat, so she had to absorb it from other people, which is another reason she fell for Firestorm in the comics. Amy Adams was on Smallville, that girl that just couldn't stop eating, and all kind of freak of the week stuff, and that's what the Flash really does, honestly. Okay. All right, here's the big one, question 12, the last one. It turns out Barry was playing blood work all along. Wow. Finally a smart Barry. Did you see that twist coming? So in other words, at the end, when Barry is gooed up to the car, I'm screaming, why don't you just vibrate through it? But he doesn't. So it looks like Barry has lost. And then Barry's mother shows up. And not Barry's mother, I'm sorry, Ramsey's mother shows up. And they're talking, and Ramsey gets disarmed, just like when Barry's mother shows up. And Barry reminds Ramsey of who he is or what he was fighting for or whatever. And that's enough to discombobulate him and break him down. And so Barry was actually playing a psychological game and fighting Ramsey from the inside, trying to make him come back to, you know, trying to do good or whatever. And then Barry says, I'll let you infect me. So Barry was playing Ramsey this whole time, counting on fighting him from the inside and using Ramsey's own doubts and his own fears and his own regrets about his mom to break him down and to make him let go of his own fear and at least weaken him enough so Barry could transport him into the same chamber that held Diet Darwin, what's his name? The black dude that, you know, created a black hole. So wonder if we saw that twist coming. So Polly says, yes, when he first showed up with Iris in the apartment, I caught on. Confirmed everything Barry said, things that were a little off. He was giving them nudges on where to go. Okay, so I'm going to say. So you basically saw that Barry had been playing Ramsey this whole time. Barry got infected on purpose to fight him from within. And he did. Okay? He did get infected on purpose to fight him from within, which again was smarter than Barry on this show usually is. So I was glad to see it, and I was actually surprised by it, because Barry, for a change, was a few steps ahead. I'm going to say that again to Polly. Barry, for a change, was a few steps ahead. That rarely happens. That just rarely happens. Okay, so yeah, but it was good to see Barry on top of it. And Chris Colfer fan says, yes. So Fabiello says, being a hero and confusing the enemy, that's what we wanted from the beginning. Let's say. Very true. They just rarely let Barry on this show do that, because when he fought Zoom, everything he did against Zoom was stupid, but that's another conversation. And Polly says, after he was infected, I think that was his plan. Yes, I don't think he meant to be. He was just trying to save Ralph's life at first. Okay. But he saw the weakness once Ramsey got inside his head. So once Ramsey got inside Barry's head, Barry said it was a two-way street. And Barry could also see Ramsey's fear and doubt and all the things that were driving him as well. Which again, like I said, you know, this mental possession thing, man. It just seems to play really kind of loose and fast how much of somebody's mind you really have access to. But, okay. Polly says it was a miracle. Because I said Barry for a change was a few steps ahead. That really happens. Polly says it was a miracle. I guess that really was a miracle. All right, folks, that's 2 o'clock. So that's it for this flash chat. I know this hour always goes so fast, unbelievably so. But anyway, so here's what the deal is. Crisis on Infinite Earths, Part 3 is tonight. That airs tonight at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. So I'm going to flash chat that tomorrow, Wednesday, December 11th. I'm not waiting a week on that one, okay, because it's going to be a cliffhanger and it needs to be fresh in our minds. We need to talk about it. And then we're going to take a month-long break. So we are going to flash chat tonight's episode tomorrow at same time, 1 o'clock on Wednesday, December 11th. So join me then on Twitter, join me live on Facebook, or download the podcast, or watch any of the videos, okay? Thank you so much for joining me on this hour, and we will see you next time on the next episode of The Last Chat. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell, and enjoy.